It took me 90 hours, but I finally platinumed Returnal. With its extended time that I spent in the game, I was able to fully experience nearly everything this game has to offer. I won't bury the lead. I loved most of this game. I think it's one of the most fun experiences that I've had in a long time, and I'm not even a fan of roguelike games at all. There was something that felt very different about this. It's a different type of game than we're used to getting from Housemarque, but it shouldn't come as a surprise that they were able to deliver a full AAA experience. After all, I don't think they've ever made a game that wasn't great. Is this game worth $70? No question that it is. Having said that, the way the collectibles work is a cumbersome mess, and if you follow me on Twitter, you know I have some strong things to say about that. I'm not going to speak about the actual story. It's fantastic in my opinion. Discovering why you are stranded on a planet and dying over and over again in some sort of twisted Groundhog Day kind of way is something you'll want to experience on your own. I can, however, tell you that this game is supposed to be difficult when you start playing. It took me nearly 10 hours to really start to feel like I finally got it. This is by design, and I appreciated it so much because when that moment does arrive, it feels glorious. The game does get easier as you push a little further each cycle. I won't recap the gameplay, as it's been talked about to death since launch, but once I figured out how to best avoid malfunctions and learned what I should avoid picking up, it became much easier. My early struggles were completely my fault as I opened way too many malignant chests. Pro tip, just avoid most malignant items entirely. Also, never use a key to open a locked chest. You'll potentially miss out on an even greater reward behind a locked door, and it would be a shame not to have a key for the door. Bottom line, Returnal is my game of the year so far. What it's not is a game that's easy to platinum, and it's not because of the difficulty of the game itself, which, by the way, is something I felt was perfect. It's entirely because of the way collectibles work. These are the survey trophies. There is one for each of the 6 biomes, and locating the scout logs and ciphers is the most frustrating aspect of this game, by far. Returnal is a game that features a randomly generated world, so each time you start a new cycle, things are a little different. The trouble is, collectibles are tied to specific rooms, so there's no guarantee that any one collectible you were looking for is even in your current game, so you're left searching and praying to the RNG gods. This is a serious annoyance that will break people, I promise. Just imagine spending an hour to get to the possible location of a collectible, only to find out that it's not even in your current game at all. Remember how I said it took me 90 hours to platinum? Well, 2/3 of that time was running the biomes over and over and over again, looking for my last 3 collectibles. Eventually, I only needed 1 scout log in the very first biome, and this is no joke. I ran through it over 100 times, and that's a conservative number. In that time, I started to learn how the random map was working. I understand roguelikes are games all about randomness, but not every part of it has to be. Based on what I was able to research, my final collectible could only spawn in 1 room. It was an unlocked side room specifically that only appeared about 50% of the time. But this specific room has 4 different variations of it that all feel similar to one another, but only one of those contained my collectible. The problem was that the one I was looking for was a quote-unquote rare spawn with a low chance of RNG. This was the story of my last collectible. I've heard from literally hundreds of people having very similar issues with a number of different collectibles in the game. It's an incredibly frustrating implementation, which baffles me because the lore you get from these is something you'd think Housemarque wants you to find. The rest of the trophies I felt were okay. They're basically tied to natural progression. If you aren't a trophy hunter, this game is an absolute gem and you'll remember it fondly. Unfortunately, I spent so much time just looking for collectibles that I will most likely remember that part of my experience most of all. Ultimately, I got my platinum, and my love for the game started to slowly return afterwards. But I'll never forget the 60-hour time sink that is completely unnecessary and, more importantly, avoidable. Do I think you should play this game if you're lucky enough to have a PS5? Absolutely, 100%. And I don't say this often, but maybe consider putting the game down after you reach the ending. Well, the real ending. That is because no matter how great a game is, random collectibles can go to hell. So my final review score for this is gold. The score would have been platinum if I had stopped where most other normal people would have stopped, but this was my platinum experience.